Chapter 12 of 7 Footprints to Satan by A. Merritt. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Ben Tucker. Chapter 12. The Necklace of Senusert. Last Link. I struck a match. Eve turned her head quickly away, but not before I had seen the tears in her eyes, and how pale was her face. "I'm quite all right, thank you," I said. "And everything, so far as I know, has gone exactly according to Satan's schedule. I know that I have. The necklace is in my pocket."
"I wasn't worrying about that," said Eve in a shaky little voice.
Her nerve was badly shattered, there was no mistaking that. Not for a moment did I think that any anxiety about me was the cause of it. That she had thoroughly understood Satan's sinister implications the night before was certain. Probably she had had forebodings, but now she knew. Nevertheless, for one reason or another, she had felt anxiety for me. I moved closer to her. "Satan made it perfectly clear to me that my continued health and getting the necklace were closely tied up together," I told her. "I am obeying his instructions to the letter naturally. My next move is to give the necklace to you." I slipped it off the hooks in my pocket. "How do you turn on the lights?" I asked her. "I want you to be sure that what I give you is what our master is expecting to get."
"Don't turn them on," whispered Eve. "Give me the damn thing."
I laughed. Sorry for her as I was, I couldn't help it. Her hands crept out and touched me. I caught them in mine, and she did not withdraw them. And after a time she drew closer, pressing against me like a frightened child. She was crying, I knew, but I said nothing, only slipped an arm around her and let her cry. Yes, very much like a little frightened child was Eve, weeping there in the darkness and clutching my hands so tightly. And in my heart I cursed Satan in 7 tongues, a cold, implacable hatred growing within me. At last she gave a little laugh and moved away.
"Thank you, Mr. Kirkham," she said tranquilly. "You make always a most dependable audience."
"Miss Demarest," I told her bluntly, "I'm done with fencing. You're panic-stricken. You know why, and so do I."
"Why should I be frightened?" she asked.
"At the destiny Satan promised you," I answered. "You know what it is. If you have any doubts at all about it, let me tell you that he left me with none after you had gone from the room last night." There was a silence, and then out of the darkness came her voice, small and despairing.
"He means to take me. He will take me, no matter what I do. I'd kill myself, but I can't. I can't. Oh, God, what can I do? Oh, God, who can help me?"
"I can make a damned good try at it," I told her, "if you'll only let me." She did not answer immediately, sitting silently, fighting for self-control. Suddenly she snapped on the light and leaned toward me, tear-washed eyes searching mine, and voice firm as though she had come to some momentous decision.
"Tell me, Mr. Kirkham, what made you stop after the second footprint? You wanted to go on. Satan was urging you on. Why did you stop?"
"Because," I said, "I heard your voice telling me to go no further." She drew a sharp breath that was like a sob.
"Is that the truth, Mr. Kirkham?"
"It is God's own truth. It was as though you stood beside me, touching my shoulder, and whispered to me to stop where I was, to climb no higher. Those devilish jewels on the crown and scepter were calling me out of 1,000 mouths. But when I heard you, or thought I did, I heard them no longer."
"Oh!"
Eve's eyes were rapt, her cheeks no longer pale, her exclamation a song.
"You did call," I whispered. "I watched you from back there beyond the light, with the others," she said. "And when the second foot shone out on Satan's side, I tried with all my strength of will to send my thought out to you. Tried so desperately to warn you. Over and over I prayed as you stood there hesitating. Oh, kind God, wherever you are, let him hear me. Please let him hear me, dear God." And you did hear.
She stopped and stared at me with widening eyes, and swiftly the color deepened in her cheeks.
"And you knew it was my voice," whispered Eve. "But you would not have heard, or hearing would not have heeded, unless...
"Unless?" I prompted.
"Unless there were something outside our 2 selves ready to help us," said Eve, a bit breathlessly.
She was blushing now up to her eyes, and I was quite sure that the reason she had given was not exactly that which caused the blush, nor the one that had been on the tip of her tongue a moment before. My own theory of what had happened was more materialistic. Something within me had sensitized my mind, not something without. I've never run across any particularly convincing evidence of disembodied energies acting as spiritual springs to soften the bumps in a bad piece of road on this earthly tour of ours. I much preferred a good tangible providence like the little Cockney burglar with his knowledge of Satan's trick walls. However, such things may be, and if it gave Eve any comfort to believe it, then let her. So I nodded solemnly and assured her it must be true. But, I asked, is there no one among all Satan's people with whom you have come in contact who might be persuaded to work against him?
Not one, she said. Considine likes me. I think he would go far to protect me. But he is tied to Satan. So are all of them. Not only by fear, you saw what happened to Cartwright, but by other reasons as well. Satan does pay highly, Mr. Kirkham. Not only in money, but in other things. He has dreadful power. Unholy power. Oh, it's not just money that people want, nor all that he gives them. You can't even dream as yet.
Drugs? I suggested unimaginatively.
You're being stupid, deliberately, she said. You know very well what Lucifer was supposed to be able to give. And he can. And he does. And even those who have lost to him still have the hope that they may do something that will give them another chance, or that his caprice will.
Has such a thing ever happened?
Yes, she replied, it has. But don't think it was because he was capable of mercy.
You mean it was simply a play to hold them tighter by dangling the hope of freedom under their noses?
Yes, she said, so their usefulness would not be weakened by despair.
Miss Demarest, I asked her bluntly, why should you think I am any different from these others?
You did not come to him of your own free will, she said, and you are no slave to his 7 shining prints.
I came pretty close to being so last night, I said somewhat ruefully.
They haven't got you, she whispered. Not like the others. And they won't. They mustn't get you, Mr. Kirkham.
I don't intend to let them, I told her grimly. She gave me her other hand at that. I glanced at my watch and jumped. There's only a little more than 10 minutes left to us, I said. We've not even spoken of any plan. We've got to meet again, quickly, and we've got to keep right on hoodwinking Satan.
That will be the great difficulty, of course, she nodded. But I'll take care of that. And you understand now, don't you, that it was that necessity that made me treat you so outrageously?
Even before Satan's confession to me, I suspected something of the sort. I grinned. And of course you understand that my equally outrageously sounding proposition to him to turn you over to me was just a following of your lead.
Better than that, she answered softly. I knew what you really did mean.
Again I shot a glance at my watch. 6 minutes. Just about time. Look here, I said abruptly. Answer me truly. When did it first occur to you that I might be the one to get you out of this trap?
When you kissed me, she whispered.
And when did you get the idea of camouflaging what you thought about me?
Right after you began kissing me.
Eve, I said, do you see any necessity for camouflage at this moment?
No,
answered Eve ingenuously.
Why?
This is why. I dropped her hands, drew her to me, and kissed her. And Eve put her arms around my neck tightly and kissed me, quite as wholeheartedly. And that was uniquely satisfactory, that. It's a coincidence, I murmured against her ear a moment or two later. But the exact second you had that idea was the precise second I decided to stick the game out.
Oh, Jim,
sighed Eve. This time she kissed me. The car was going more slowly. I cursed helplessly Satan's inflexible schedule. Eve, I said swiftly, and thrust the necklace of Senusert in her hands. Do you know a little Englishman named Barker, the electrician? He seems to know you.
Yes,
she answered, her eyes with wonder.
I know him, but how?
Get in touch with him as soon as you can, I bade her. I haven't time to explain, but Barker's to be trusted. Tell him he must get to me in my room the first night I return. By hook or crook, he's got to. You understand? She nodded, eyes wider. Arrange it, I said, so that you'll be there that night too.
All right, Jim, said Eve.
I looked at my watch. I had 1 3/4 minutes more. We'd put it to excellent use. The car stopped. "Remember Barker," I whispered. I opened the door and stepped out. It closed behind me and the car rolled off. The obelisk was nearby. I walked around it obediently. As I started for Fifth Avenue, I saw a man on another path about 100 feet from me. His overcoat and hat were the same as mine. He swung a Malacca cane. A vast curiosity struck me. Was it my double? I started toward him and halted. If I followed him, I was disobeying Satan's instructions. Less than at any time did I want to do that. Reluctantly, I turned and let him go. I hailed a taxi and started to the club. There was a rosy light outside the windows. I felt like singing. The walkers on the avenue seemed to skip gaily. Eve had gone a bit to my head. Suddenly, the rosiness dimmed. The song died. Reason began to function. No doubt the absence of the necklace had been soon discovered. The doors of the museum would have been closed and none allowed to depart without being searched. Perhaps the alarm had been sounded even as I'd gone down the steps. It might be that I'd been the only one who had gotten out. If that were so, then obviously I must be suspected. I had deliberately drawn the attention of the guards to me, not only in the corridor, but in the treasure room. They would remember me. Why had I slipped away, ignoring the disturbances, if I had not had some strong reason? What reason could I have had except making away with the necklace? Or, supposing the theft had not been discovered until after the museum had been emptied, still I would find it difficult to explain why I had so rapidly made my exit, been the only one to take no interest in the happenings. Had Satan missed a move in his complicated game, made an error in his elaborate calculations? Or had he coldly planned to have suspicion rest upon me? Whether or not he had, it must. In no easy frame of mind, I dismissed the taxi and entered the club.
"Back early, Mr. Kirkham?"
smiled the clerk at the desk as he handed me my keys. Quite evidently he had no suspicion that the Kirkham who had just gone out a few hours before and the one who had just returned were two distinct persons. My double, I reflected, must be good indeed. "I'm going to be almighty busy for the next few hours," I told him. "I've some writing to do that will demand my entire concentration. There's nothing, absolutely nothing, of sufficient importance to break in on me. It's very likely that there will be telephone calls and visitors. Tell everybody that I'm out. If it's reporters, tell them I'll see them at 8 o'clock. Slip copies of all the afternoon papers up to me at 7 o'clock, not before. Get me the latest editions, and no matter who calls, don't let me be bothered."
"I'll put an extra key in your box," he said. "It always looks better."
I went to my room. Locking the door, I made a minute inspection. On my desk was my 3-day accumulation of mail. There were not many letters, none was important, all had been opened. 2 were invitations to speak at dinners. Carbon copies of notes of regret were attached to them. My signature upon them was perfect. My double's powers of imitation were clearly not limited to voice and appearance. My reason for declining, I was much interested in learning, was that I would not be in the city on the dates of the dinners. So, where the devil, I wondered, was I to be? Beside my typewriter was a bulky document. Rifling its pages, I discovered that it was a report upon the possibilities of certain mineralized lands in China. It was addressed to the same brilliant attorney who had toasted the near-damned at Satan's feast of the night before. It was corrected and annotated in my own handwriting. I had, of course, no knowledge of its purpose, but I was sure that the lawyer would be able to discuss it with easy familiarity if circumstances forced it to his attention. My confidence in Satan revived. I felt much more comfortable. I looked through the pockets of my clothes hanging in the closet. There was not even a scrap of paper. 7 o'clock came, and with it a discreet knock at my door. It was Robert, the night clerk, with a bundle of evening papers. His eyes were rather wide, and I could see questions sticking out all over him. Well, he couldn't be more curious about what I had to say regarding what it was in those papers than I was to know what was in them, nor would it do to let him suspect the extent of my ignorance. So I took them from him with a discouragingly far-away air and absent-mindedly closed the door in his face. The headlines leaped out at me from the first I opened. "Triple tragedy at the Metropolitan Museum. Priceless relic missing. Woman murdered before eyes of guards and visitors, her slayer killed by another who commits suicide when he is captured. Explorer Kirkham balks thieves. Gives the alarm that closes doors when mysterious series of fatal stabbings throws treasure house into chaos. Robber hides old Egyptian princess's necklace and makes escape. Metropolitan to be closed until search reveals it. In different words, all the rest of the headlines said about the same thing. I read the stories. Now and then I had the feeling that somebody was shooting a fine spray of ice water between my shoulder blades. I quote from the most complete account. An unknown woman was stabbed to death this afternoon in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, before the eyes of half a dozen guards and some 20 or more visitors. Her murderer tried to escape, but before he could get far, was attacked by the companion of the woman, tripped, and a knife thrust through his heart. The second slayer was caught after a chase. As he was being taken to the curator's office to await the police, he collapsed. He died within a few seconds, the victim apparently of some swift poison which he had managed to slip into his mouth. Both the murders and the suicide occurred close to the Egyptian room, where are kept some of the choicest treasures of the museum. Taking advantage of the confusion, someone forced open the case containing the ancient necklace given to his daughter by the pharaoh Senusert II. The necklace, a priceless relic of the past, and long the admiration of thousands of visitors, was taken. Its removal from the building was frustrated, however, by the alertness of Mr. James Kirkham, the noted explorer who caused the doors to be locked before anyone could leave the museum. Search of everyone within the walls failed to reveal the stolen treasure. It is supposed that the thief became panic-stricken when he found that no one could get out, and tucked the necklace away in some hidden corner. Whether he did it thinking to return and recover it, or merely to get rid of it, cannot of course be known. The museum will be closed to visitors until it is found, which, thanks to Mr. Kirkham's quick thinking, is only a matter of time. Neither the museum authorities nor the police believe that there is any connection between the tragedy and the theft, the latter having obviously been a sudden temptation born from the opportunity-giving confusion. Well, I reflected, I could tell them better than that. And if the museum remained closed until they found the necklace there, the door hinges would have a chance to become rather rusty. But 3 lives the price of the bauble. I resumed the reading with cold horror at my heart. It was shortly after 2 o'clock when one of the guards in the Egyptian wing first took special notice of the woman and the 2 men. They were talking together earnestly, discussing seemingly an exhibit of Ushabtu figures, toy-like wooden models from a tomb. The woman was about 30, attractive, blonde, and apparently English. The men were older, and the guard took them to be Syrians. What had particularly drawn his attention to them was the curious pallor of their faces and the out-of-the-ordinary largeness of their eyes. "Looked like dopes," he says, "and then again they didn't. Their faces weren't a sick white, more of a transparent. They didn't behave like dopes either. They seemed to be talking sensible enough, dressed top-notch, too." He put them down finally as foreigners and relaxed his attention. In a few minutes he noticed one of the men walking by him. It was later ascertained that this man had accompanied the woman when she entered the museum about 1:30. The cloakroom attendant's attention had also been attracted by their pallor and their curious eyes. This man passed the entrance to the small room where the Senusert necklace was on display with the other ancient jewels. He turned into the next corridor and disappeared. The woman had continued talking to the second man, who, it appears, came into the museum a little before 2 o'clock. Suddenly the guard heard a scream. He swung around and saw the 2 struggling together, the woman trying to ward off blows from a long knife with which the man was stabbing at her. The guard, William Barton, shouted and ran for them. At the same time, visitors came running in from all directions, drawn by the cries. They got in Barton's way, and he could not shoot for fear of hitting the woman or some of the excited spectators. The whole affair was a matter of seconds. The knife plunged into the woman's throat. The murderer, brandishing his red blade, burst through the horror-stricken onlookers and ran in the direction the first man had gone. As he was close to the door of the necklace room, the people who had been in it came rushing out. With them was one of the 2 guards who kept watch there. They piled back, falling over each other in their haste to get out of reach of the knife. There was a panic-stricken scramble which the second guard tried to quiet. In the meantime, the murderer had come face to face with the woman's companion at the turn of the next corridor. He struck at the latter and missed, and fled into the armor room with the other close behind him, a knife now in his own hand. The pair gripped and fell, rolling over the tiled floor, and each striving to plunge his dagger into the other. Guards and visitors were piling in from every side, and the place was in pandemonium. Then they saw the hand of the pursuer flash up and down. The underman shrieked, and the knife was buried in his heart. The killer leaped to his feet and began to run blindly. With the guards and others after him, he darted out into the Egyptian wing corridor. There they had cornered him and brought him down. He was beaten half into insensibility. As he was being carried to the curator's office, his body went limp and heavy. They put him down. He was dead. Either shock or some quick and powerful poison which he had taken when he realized escape was impossible had killed him. The autopsy will decide which. The whole tragedy had occurred in an almost incredibly brief time. Less than 5 minutes had elapsed between the first scream of the woman and the third death, but it was time enough to give the necklace thief his opportunity. Among the visitors at the museum was Mr. James Kirkham, the noted explorer, who recently brought to America the famous Yunnan jades, which Mr. Rockbilt presented to the Metropolitan. Mr. Kirkham had been preparing an exhaustive report upon mining possibilities in China for a certain powerful American syndicate. He had been working on it for the last 2 days with intense concentration and felt the need this afternoon of a little relaxation. He decided to spend a couple of hours at the museum. He had strolled into the Egyptian room where the necklace was kept and was studying some amulets in a case in a far corner when he heard the woman scream. He saw those who were in the room running and followed them. He did not see the killings, but was a witness to the capture of the second man. Preoccupied by the necessity of completing his report and deciding that he had had enough relaxation, Mr. Kirkham started to leave. He had just reached the doors of the museum when a suspicion seized him. Trained by the necessities of his occupation to keenest observation, he recalled that while he was hastening to the entrance of the necklace room, following the others, someone had brushed past him going into the room. He recalled also hearing immediately afterward a sharp click like the forcing of a lock. With his attention focused upon what was going on without, the impressions then carried with them no significance. But now it seems they might be important. Mr. Kirkham turned back instantly, and ordered the alarm to be sounded, which at once closes the doors of the museum. As he is well known at the Metropolitan, he was as instantly obeyed. And it was that trained observation of his and quick thinking which beyond all doubt foiled the thief of the necklace. There followed an account of the discovery of the raped cabinet, the verification of the fact that no one had gone out of the museum either during or after the disturbances, the searching of everybody in the curator's offices, and the careful shepherding of them out one by one so no one could stop and pick up the necklace from wherever it had been hidden. It interested me to find that I had demanded to be searched with the rest, despite the curator's protests. I came to my interview substantially the same in all the papers. The truth is, so I was quoted as having said, I feel a bit guilty that I did not at once realize the importance of those impressions and turn back into the room. I could probably have caught the thief red-handed. The fact is that my mind was about 9/10 taken up with that infernal report which must be finished and mailed tonight. I have a vague idea that there were about a dozen people in the room, but not the slightest recollection of what they looked like. When I heard the woman scream, it was like being jarred out of sleep. My progress to the door was half automatic. It was only when I was about to go out of the museum that memory began to function, and I recalled that furtive brushing past me of someone and the clicking noise. Then, of course, there was only one thing to be done. Make sure that nobody got out until it was determined whether or not anything had been stolen. The entrance guard deserves great credit for the promptness with which he sounded that alarm. I agree with the curator that there can be no connection between the theft and the killings. How could there possibly be? Someone, and he can be no professional because any professional would know that there was no way of selling such a thing, had a sudden crazy impulse. His probable next thought was one of sincere repentance and an intense desire to get rid of the necklace instantly. The only problem is finding where he slipped it. You say it was a lucky thing for the museum that I turned back when I did, smiled Kirkham. Well, I think it was a mighty lucky thing for me. I wouldn't like being in the position that, having been the first one out of the museum, and maybe the only one, for the theft would soon have been discovered, would have put me. At this, the curator, despite his anxiety, laughed heartily. There was more to the story, much more, but that was all I was quoted as saying. The guard whom I had seen lying across the threshold told how he had been knocked down in the backward rush, and somebody had kicked me in the ear or something. The second guard had joined in the chase. One paper had a grisly special about the possibility of the thief having crawled into one of the suits of armor and dying within it, of thirst and hunger. The writer evidently thought of armor as an iron box in which one could hide like a closet. All the accounts agreed that there was little chance of identifying the three dead. There was not a thing in their clothing or about them to give a single clue. Well, there it all was. There was my alibi, complete. There were Satan's chessmen, now all properly clicked into place, including the three who would never be moved again. It wasn't nice reading for me, not at all. Particularly did I wince at the curator's amusement that my honesty could come into question. But again my double had done a good job. It had been he, of course, who had slipped by me as I had bent to tie my shoe, smoothly taking up my trail without apparent break. And it had been he whom I had passed at the obelisk as I had slipped as smoothly back into his. No one had noticed me come down the museum steps and enter the automobile that held Eve. The diversion on the sidewalk had made sure of that. There were no gaps in the alibi. And the 3 dead people who had furnished the diversion in the museum that had enabled me to steal the necklace? Slaves of Satan's mysterious drug, the Keft. The description of their strange eyes and their pallor proved that, if I had needed proof. Satan's slaves playing faithfully the parts he had given them, in blissful confidence of a perpetual paradise for their immediate reward. I read the stories over again. At 8 o'clock the reporters were sent up to my room. I restrained myself severely to the lines of my early interview. Their visit was largely perfunctory. After all, there was not much that I could say. I left the report that had preoccupied me so greatly lying where they could see it. I went even further. Taking the hint from my double's remarks, I sealed and addressed it, and asked one of them to drop it into the post office for me on his way back to his paper. When they had gone, I had dinner sent up to my room. But when I went to bed, hours later, it was with a cold little sick feeling at the pit of my stomach. More than at any time, I was inclined to credit Satan's version of his identity. For the first time, I was afraid of him. End of chapter 12.